All right, we are back in it, in effect, running with war broadcast show, online basketball talk at the highest order. Your man Kyle Means here, editorial director of War Media. Alongside me here for the beginning of the show today is Gabriel Wilkins, our main man, contributor to Running with War show and War Media. And we got Josh should be coming through momentarily, and we'll also have finally for the first time on our show our new contributor to the uh, War Ready Substack page, doing a great job writing on the Bulls, covering them throughout their playoff run. Stephen Gardner should be joining us in the back half of the show. Just gonna give you a nice little hour here, thereabout on this show today, because we'll have another one coming up on Thursday, actually, with a couple of guests and everything. Probably go a little longer on that one, but just hit you with a few things. Of course, plenty to talk about as we enter this playoff season. Everyone's been, a nice rollicking first few days of games. And let me bring Josh in. He's available now. Josh, what's up?
Oh, I'm on mute. Whoops.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there we go. What's up, fellas?
What's going on?
Man. I was just still in our intro, man. Just glad you're able to join in. But like I said, we're doing another show on Thursday. We should have some more of the crew as well as some guests. But today, like I said, just wanted to keep up with things, catch up on things. Gabe and Josh, of course, is good a guys to talk to as any about these playoffs so far. And I guess before we go into like what's been going on in the league and stuff, I guess there's some stories, a couple stories popped up today. You got the Kyrie thing, him getting $50,000 fine for his actions on Sunday, the middle fingers to Boston crowd and whatnot. And also, more along the lines of what's happening on the court or what could happen on the court. Some more talk about the apparent timelines for both Doncic and Ben Simmons are out there, possibly 2 returns for both of those players in their respective series. But of the 8 series that we got going on, we got Atlanta and Miami battling right now as we speak for game 2 in Miami. Also, Minnesota and Memphis is tipping off. That's going to be an interesting series to talk about. And I forget what's the third game tonight, gentlemen?
Pelicans and Suns in Phoenix.
Okay. So you got that number 1 seed, of course. Suns came out very aggressively and won that first game pretty easily. But of these early games and these series, have they played out so far? What's been some of the things that have stuck to you in regards to your observing these series, or anything that's been a particular surprise or disappointment or whatever?
Hard to make a lot out of one game and just one game only out of all these 8 series, but one team that has impressed out of all 8 series to me has been Minnesota. The way they came out and punched Memphis in the mouth, in game 1 on the road, that was a big time performance by those young guys. Anthony Edwards, who's never been shy on any big time stage, he balled out and sent the message to the likes of John Moran, Dylan Brooks, and those guys, dropping over 30 in that game. Karl Anthony Towns, who I expected to come out aggressively following the wake of the play-in game where he was dealing with a lot of foul trouble and a bunch of struggles. He played very well, and he sent the message to Jaren Jackson Jr. on that jam. So, and Pat Bev, has been a real calm, cool, collective veteran presence for that team that they needed to get over that hump. That's a team, man. If they can build off of the momentum that they were able to rally together and get in game 1, they could give Memphis a run. and possibly we could be looking at a 6 or 7 game series. That's looking like the most interesting series in the playoffs right now. That's not between the Nets and the Celtics.
Yeah,
Josh, what are your early thoughts, Josh?
Yeah, I agree with you, Gabe, 100%. That's definitely the series, probably the most intriguing series that I want to look out and watch for, aside from obviously the Nets and the Celtics. But I think for me, if you want to talk about what stood out to me the most so far, like Gabe said, it's tough to do it after one game. But for me personally, it probably would be the Philadelphia Sixers and Raptors game, just because as much as you would think. I didn't expect Philadelphia to come out the way that they have these past couple games. A lot of it's because it's very uncertain about what Harden's going to bring to the table. You expect Joel Embiid to do the same, but you would think Toronto would put more of a fight, especially on the defensive end against Philadelphia, especially considering that you actually have one of the only guys that really can at least slow down Joel Embiid a little bit in Pascal Siakam, and he hasn't been able to seal the deal for them. And I think for me, the biggest thing or the biggest plus in all of this has been not just the improvement side from a coaching perspective with Doc Rivers and knowing his history of not always making the best adjustments when needed in games, but Tyrese Maxey, he's here. He's arrived too. We talked about Anthony Edwards and what he brings to the table to the Timberwolves, and that's a big fact. But Maxey's a key puzzle to this thing too with the Sixers, and he's shown that he's not shy of the big moments either. He's outperforming James Harden right now in this series, which is something you would not say previously. But the fact that he's outperforming and performing in a way that is helping this team, especially on the offensive end, and timely possessions, especially offensively with Tobias Harris as well. He's shown up a little bit, especially on the defensive end too. I think that's those two factors are really bringing Philadelphia over the hump, which when I first looked at this series, I thought in some ways would be non-existent or be very difficult to capitalize on a consistent basis throughout the series for them. But kudos to the Sixers, man. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They're playing as one of the top seeds in the conference, and Joel Embiid is showing why he's the MVP of this team. And by him going out doing that, along with the other reinforcements stepping up to the plate, it's making it a lot harder for Toronto to come out here and do their thing. Especially when you're talking about playing against Philadelphia on the road, which is very difficult to do in general, just because of the atmosphere and the environment that the Philadelphia fans bring.
Picking up on a couple things you mentioned there, Josh. Now, Gabe mentioned most of the series being only a game in, but a couple of them already have had 2 games played. And, Josh mentioned just about all of them. The Golden State, Denver was the only one he didn't mention, but the other 2, Philly and Toronto, and Dallas and Utah. So you got those 3 series right quick. They're different dynamics with each of those series, because you got Golden State really asserting itself in this series, showing to be a pretty much a disastrous matchup for Denver. But Denver still at least gets to come back home for their next couple games. But you had, with Dallas and Utah, you had the whole thing with Dallas not playing 1 second of ball with Luka Doncic, and yet they've almost come out to a 2-0 lead in that series. They thoroughly outplayed Utah in the game 2 there. And in the Philly, like Josh mentioned, the Philly Toronto series, Philly pretty much outclassing Toronto so far in that series. But out of those 3 series, would you say that they're all pretty much wrote in now? Would you pencil in a winner there, or do you think they still have the chance to be competitive?
Oh, you can't pencil in a winner on the Mavs and Jazz series. That series can go in either way. I feel like with Philly and Toronto, like Josh was saying, Tyrese Maxey is outperforming James Harden. He's actually making James Harden's life a lot more easier than it's ever been before. Granted, he has outperformed as far as like a stat, standpoint, but he's really making James life easy, and he's taking a lot of pressure off of James. And James, as a result, could just play the point guard and just seek to set everybody up and make sure everybody eat. You don't really have to do too much scoring. If at best getting 6 to 8 points a quarter at best. But Dallas and Utah, Dallas and Utah, that series could go either way.
Even though there hasn't been any Luka yet, you don't think that Dallas would have an advantage going forward with Luka, given that they played them tough without Luka?
Well, I mean, when Luka inserts himself in this series, we'll see. But I felt like going into the series that was a 6 or 7 game series, whether Luka was in or not. And I think Utah showed that last night. They have one of the worst point of attack defenses in the league. And Josh Everly on Twitter, he brought up a very interesting point, and it made me think back to a lot of matchups when I was covering the Rockets. Seeing the Jazz and Donovan Mitchell his first 2 years in the league, they always had guards that could never defend on the perimeter. And Chris Paul, career high. Who is it? Who's his career high in the playoffs come against? Utah, Game 5 of the Western Conference Semis in 2018. Jamal Murray exploded against the Jazz down in the bubble, was putting up 50-pointers. And him and Donovan were going back and forth, and they edged them, the Jazz, in 7 in that series. Terrence Mann last year, playoff career high. Jalen Brunson, we saw last night, 41 points. Mm-hmm. Everybody always has career high games at the guard spot against the Utah Jazz. Why? Because their point of attack defense is one of the worst in the league. And even though Rudy Gobert makes up for a lot of the mess in the interior, a lot of these guards are finding out ways to get to him. You can draw him out, and if you have quick foot speed, you can get around him and at least get a bucket. Spencer Dinwiddie did it a couple of times last night in critical situations. I'm not saying that Dallas wouldn't have the edge with Luka. They probably can, but the only reason why I would even give Utah a fighting chance is because of Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell is one of those guys in the playoffs. I've seen him his rookie year. He's been in the playoffs since he was a rookie. Every time they needed big games, Donovan's always responded, even in spite of losses.
Yeah, that's true, man. I completely with you 100% on all of that. That was going to be what I was going to say was the series that can definitely go either way. Donovan Mitchell, like I said, you highlighted Donovan Mitchell doing what he can do best. He knows how to put the ball in the basket anytime, any given day on the court. So that's really their saving grace through all of this. That can help take them to that next level. And yeah, no Luka, no problem. But even if Luka does come back, we don't know what Luka's going to look like coming off that calf strain. He may not be able to move and maneuver and play the way that he wants to play. Yeah. So if that's the case, if anything, it just gives Dallas the chance to elevate for other people, role players to step up. And I think Game 2 was encouraging for them because of guys like Jalen Brunson being able to step up and score those 41 points, to be able to be like, I can help carry this team. And without Luka on the floor, that's big for Dallas because they never had a guy that could help carry them to that next level prior to this year. And this year, in moments it's shown that Spencer Dinwiddie could be that guy, but to see Jalen Brunson be that guy, that to help with them, that can be a nice 3-man punch, especially if Luka does come back somewhat healthy to play in this series. You just mentioned, Gabe, about Utah struggles. They're going to struggle guarding a 3-guard lineup with Luka, Spencer Dinwiddie, and Jalen Brunson all on the floor, especially if Luka doesn't have to run the point guard that much. He can play that off guard and let Jalen Brunson run the show offensively. And being able to dish the ball to Spencer Dinwiddie and Luka to focus on those scoring attributes, which we know they are capable of doing. So I think, if anything, bringing Luka back will open up the floor even more, but you might actually be hurting yourself in some way if you're Dallas and not rushing. You might be bettering yourself and not rushing Luka back and just letting the role players flow in the roles in the ways that they're going, because it's becoming so effective against this Jazz team. You don't want to mess up that flow and that chemistry.
And I'm glad you said that, because one thing that Dallas does in the minutes without Luka, they play at a much faster pace. Luka is a guy who is a ball pounder. He is a guy who's going to get his in isolation. He slows down the pace. And you notice they play at a much faster pace. I think when Luka went down earlier in the year during the regular season and was in the health and safety protocol, that was a blessing in disguise for Dallas, because it forced the likes of guys like a Brunson to step up and initiate and guide the offense. It put him in position to succeed, even though Dinwiddie wasn't there yet and he was still in Washington. Dorian Finney-Smith, who has also stepped up and hit some timely shots and been key on the defensive end for them, stepped up as a playmaker and evolved as well and showed that he could do some things with the basketball. And now we see Maxi Kleber, who was shooting at least under 20% in the month of March from three-point land, cooking up like he did yesterday, knocking down some big-time catch-and-shoot looks. To me, he was just as deserving of the game ball as much as Brunson was, because without his impact off the bench, Dallas doesn't come through in that game. It was a back-and-forth game, even though Dallas outplayed him in the fourth. But I just look at Utah, man, and I got a lot of questions about them in the current and in the future going forward with that roster.
A lot of us do.
Yeah.
And if they lose this series, that's just gonna really exacerbate everything. It's gonna, people are saying like it's pretty much gonna ensure the end of this current group that they have if they're unable to get past this series at all. This should be something that they should have taken advantage of more so than they have. And they, like I said, a lot of their faults really came to the surface in that game too. But right quick, I want to jump into another point that Josh sort of got into. Young players really stepping out, playoff people who we haven't seen really produce in the playoffs, either because they were in smaller positions, smaller roles in previous years, or they haven't played in the playoffs at all yet, like Anthony Edwards, Josh mentioned, Tyrese Maxey emerging, Jordan Poole emerging. Am I missing anybody? It's a number of guys. When you can look at the Memphis team, and we'll see tonight how they rebound off the game one loss. But that's a team that, again, they haven't played as a unit, and really, and most of them don't have any playoff experience at all. You can even look at the Bulls. We're gonna get to the Bulls in a little bit. A lot of the Bulls, little to no playoff experience. And what do you guys got any thoughts though on the guys who are sort of emerging already? The people sort of a little bit of a new class of playoff heroes maybe developing in this playoffs, especially when you look at the fact that we are LeBron-less again in this playoffs, and he won't suck up so much the oxygen as usual. There is some space now for other guys to shine and make a name for themselves.
I think the biggest thing that needs to be discussed from all this, because obviously the NBA is in good hands regardless. We know the young talent here are taking things to the next level. So the NBA is in good hands in the future. But what makes this so ironic or what makes athletes so successful is not just the talent that they bring, but the situations they are in exploiting that talent. And all these players are in unique situations where the talents can be exploited in such a big way that it impacts the game and honestly leads to culture changes. When you talk about Anthony Edwards and what he brings to the table, they changed that whole offense and put that thing around him, and they're going where he goes, and he's taking them to newer heights with Cat as a sidekick right now in Minnesota. Talk about Memphis. Ja Morant came in as soon as he got into the league and made that impact from the jump, and now the team is following Ja into the playoffs. Tyrese Maxey may not be the focal guy, but boy, you could tell in these playoffs, he's one of the top go-tos if Joel Embiid ain't got that ball. He's the one that's going to take this thing to the next level. It's not necessarily James Harden all the time. It's Tyrese Maxey. They're putting these young players in ideal situations to take things to the next level. And when you talk about the Bulls, yes, none of them don't have much playoff experience, but one guy who actually somewhat played was Kobe. Kobe White, as of recent, has emerged himself as a go-to player for this Bulls team when DeMar and Zach LaVine aren't hitting. So these young guys are seizing the opportunities, but it's the opportunities that are given to them in the roles that they're in that's allowing them to thrive in the situations that they currently are. And you got to give coach credit to the coaching staff for allowing that to happen, but also some of the veteran stars that they're playing around to help aid them in that process. And I think it's just a testimony to what the future really holds for the league, especially when like you mentioned, Kyle. No LeBron. It seems like this playoff is no problem when it comes to basketball talent and what we're able to watch in the postseason.
Yeah. I'm gonna shout out Bo Monty Jones to his HBO show. He had a good bit at the beginning of the last show about LeBron needing to step aside. He was more he's more forceful about it. Like O'Brien, becoming the old dude at the club now, and it's good. But like Josh said, a lot of young talent, a lot of emerging talent in the league is going to be fine, no matter when LeBron steps aside officially or anybody else. You look at some of the other players, players who like a Damian Lillard, guys who we've sort of expected to they did what Russell Westbrook, because you named about 4 or 5 Lakers in that case, guys who we've expected and seen play in the playoffs for years not being available in this year's playoffs, on top of LeBron. So it's and teams like Minnesota and Memphis who seem like they have the chance to really define what the playoffs are going to be going forward, with their units that they got. So it's going to be interesting to see how this year's sort of develops and advances that storyline.
No question. And one thing about it is I've been an advocate for the league showcasing a lot of these young teams on national television since the bubble. You could tell when the league was down in the bubble that Memphis was on the come up.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell coming out the bubble that a team like New Orleans was on the come up. Even, with a non-healthy Zion and Alonzo Ball, who at the time you didn't know what his long-term fit would be there or how they valued him. But you could see that, and now Brandon Ingram, a guy who I thought was an all-star, stepping up the way he did and impressing in the play-in tournament, helping the Pelicans go from a 9 seed into the playoffs. That deserves to be talked about and given credit to as well. For the performance that he's had. So it does show that the league is in a great place, and it has been in a good place for the last several years. Even in LeBron-dominated postseason runs, you could kind of tell that young talent was coming. And now I think you're starting to see that young talent emerge, and that's a beautiful thing. Like with Memphis and Ja Morant, granted they lost game 1, but he still had an impressive showing. And those guys, I think they had playoff experience, but they just don't have playoff experience as a top 3 seed like we're seeing them in right now with home court advantage. We're going to see them grow up and see how do they handle being one of the upper echelon teams in the Western Conference now are viewed upon as that. It's like you're not the new kids on the block anymore, but you're the cool kids now. You got a chance to really elevate yourself and grow.
How much stock do y'all put into the idea that teams got to lose in the playoffs to learn how to win?
A lot.
Yeah. I mean, history sort of is on your side with that.
You gotta get beat up in order to learn what it takes to win in the league. I mean, I don't think it's been too many teams that have gotten together, even veteran-laden teams, within year 1 and just found a way to win the championship. Right. I mean, outside of maybe the 07, 08 Celtics, and maybe when Kawhi did it with the Raptors. But even when Kawhi did it with the Raptors, that team of the nucleus, or the core nucleus of that team was already formed. Right. And, he just was inserted within it. So, it's like, and they went through.
And you had kind of, last year with CP3 sort of being, the icing on the cake or the cherry on top. Jay Crowder also helped with that as well, with the changing of the maturing of that team into becoming a Western Conference champion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree.
But it's rare. It's rare, though. It is rare. Like most teams, I'll let you go on the second job. I'll just going over the history. When you look at just about any team that has won a championship, you could see in the immediate years ahead of that, they typically lost at some point in the playoffs, either in the finals or in their conference. We of course famously with the Bulls, they had to get past the Detroit and in the East before they could have their even turn in the finals. And of course, so many teams couldn't get past Mike once he got to that mountain, that peak. And it's pretty much the applied history for all championship teams in the NBA. But like we said, things are changing in the league. The league is not the same exactly as it was 20, 30 years ago. So maybe we could see possibly one team take that rocket ship, that sort of NFL like worst to first or close to it sometime. And I wouldn't be surprised if it happened at least once in the next 10 years or so. But as of now, the history is still what it is as far as you got to, like say, take your lumps, as Sean said.
We've seen it in the last 20 years. I mean, think about, I don't think the 07-08 Celtics get enough credit for what Danny Ainge was able to do with that roster and convert that from a lottery-bound team into a 60-plus win team and win in 1 year, even though it was with 3 all-star veterans. Those guys had never played before. I think that's kind of the thing. Like people will look at that and be like, yeah, that's that first big 3, and that's you had those guys at the score, right? But you're right. It took a complete overhaul of that team, and they were able to go and beat a very credible Laker team that year to get that championship. And that team definitely the year before would not have come close to doing that with or without Garnett, probably. And then I think about the 14-15 Cavs. Even though they lost the finals in 6 to Golden State, I think a lot of people forget that they had the #1 overall pick going into that season. Wiggins. And they traded him to get Kevin Love, a trade that I knew was going to happen like a month before it actually happened because I was talking to a lot of people about it. But like for LeBron to do what he did coming over there with a young team that had never touched the playoffs or sniffed a moment of playoff basketball and lead them to the finals, that was something that I had never seen done before. And at the time I had been like, that was 2015, like that was a big deal. And it still is a big deal when you look at it in hindsight, even years later.
One thing I'll push back on though is that, and like I say, those were sort of 1 year turnarounds, and they both occurred mainly with the acquisition of an all-time great for Williams to the next. What I think we still need to see is a team built much like Memphis has been built over time that put itself together.
I get what you're saying.
Pretty much from within,
from the ground up.
From the ground up, like built itself up, and Spurs are good.
We kind of already did. I don't know if you want to count the Detroit Pistons when they had Chauncey and Rip and those guys before they got Sheed. That could be a team that had no superstars on it that won it in that.
That's an outlier. Yeah, in that way, that is an outlier.
And you technically have Golden State too, because you drafted Steph, you drafted Clay, you drafted Draymond, you drafted Harrison Barnes. You had no other stars on the team that you brought in to develop for that team,
and they won before they got KD.
They were definitely an organically grown team, and that was a team.
But they also lost. Like I say, they did lose though in the playoffs before. But I'm talking about like I say, it's hard for that to happen for a team that, like I say, in their first time hitting the playoffs. That's what you have your first time hitting the playoffs. You may spend a couple years gestating and being sorry. That's how most teams get better. They build a couple years up. They have a franchise player that they build around, and he becomes confident and grows as a player, and to the point where they become an all-pro level guy, all-star, of course. And then you make that strike as soon as you get in the playoffs. Not where you lose in the first round 1 year, lose the second round, lose in the conference finals a couple years, then win. Like that first time, like I said, that's what it would be if Memphis won this year. That's what I'm talking about. Like if Memphis won this year.
But then remember last year they got knocked out in 5 to the Jazz. So this isn't their first go round technically.
Oh, you're right.
They were playing team last year. They was a playing team the last 2 years. The first year they lost to Portland in the playoff game, in the playing game in the bubble. And then they beat San Antonio and they beat Golden State to get the AC in the West last year. Yeah. And then they won game 1 and then they lost the last 4. But so they've even lost in the play. I mean, it's part of the process more. That's hard to do with young guys, man. Like I
Yeah,
remember when Golden State got to their first playoff run, and it's funny because I actually had a lot of homies from the Bay when I was in college, and I was talking with them that year, going into that year, watching them in summer league, watching Clay and Dre and Steph was in the. I'm like, man, they really assembling a solid roster where under Mark, you know, they can really do something and get to the playoffs and make some noise. They beat Denver in round 1, but then they went up against San Antonio and lost in 6. Then the next year they lost to LA and the Clippers in 7. Then they finally got over the hump. And then, you know, they made a couple of additions on the margin and whatnot.
Yeah. You're right. Well, I guess I forgot. I did sleep on the past things. I guess it would be more actually on point if it was the Timberwolves, even though Cat has been in the playoffs, but Cat with Edwards, I mean, and Russ, you know, that and they had that. See, that's their first time.
Nah,
and them
D'Lo's been to the playoffs because he led the
Right.
Nets team to go.
I'm talking about with Minnesota though. With Minnesota.
Oh well, yeah, with
Yeah.
Minnesota, yeah.
But he was
particular
he was a trade piece too. He was the guy that they acquired from Golden State. You know, they gave up a lot to get him. So even though their roster, for the most part, you can say has been somewhat organically grown in the sense that they have 2 number 1 picks that were drafted there. If you exclude Cat and you exclude Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels, most of their roster isn't homegrown. It's kind of like Minnesota is similar to like the White Sox in a sense. Like, yeah, you have a lot of homegrown prospects with the White Sox organization, but then for every homegrown prospect, you got guys that were acquired via trade, via free agency, and so forth like that, that really made the roster elevate itself from being a perennial loser to now being a player in the American League. So, I mean, that's kind of similar in a sense, but if Minnesota did win, that would be big, but then that would be like on some 1998 New York Knicks type of stuff, a 99 New York Knicks type of stuff where like they was an AC and then they got to the
99,
finals.
yeah.
That's hard as hell to do. Like it's only
and that was a random year because you know the lockout and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, like in a typical NBA season, well, you know, it's like I said, we've been saying it's hard. It's hard for a young team, a team without playoff experience, to to be able to jump all those hurdles and get itself to the position to win, and then have the fortitude to win when you got to do it. So that's in a way we're sort of dealing with that here in Chicago. We do have a couple of players with some extensive playoff experience. One in particular with a lot of experience, you might want to strike from the record, but most of the team here, we'll get into that in a minute, but a lot of the team, of course, doing it for the first time. And when we talk about doing it for the first time, breaking your V card, as it were, on Running with WARR is our man, Steven Gardner. What's going on, brother?
What's going on, y'all? What's going on? Just got
you
off work.
on the move.
Ready to get it? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'll put you in the more work, man. I've been putting you through, giving you a lot of work recently, man. And you've been hitting it hard, man. So I appreciate what you've been doing, man. Steven has been writing for us on our Substack page already. He's been doing some great stuff, really breaking down the games well, and breaking down the Bulls well. And shout out to Josh too, man. Josh got a piece up now on the page. He previewed all the series and gave his the predictions on the series. And I believe for the Bulls, you had them losing in the gentleman's sweep, right, Josh? Both of you had them losing in the gentleman's sweep, right?
Yep.
The brooms.
Not much hope for the guys, but as we look towards this game 2 that coming up tomorrow, game 1, it started out like it was going to be a complete wash for the Bulls, but they showed some heart and put themselves in a position where they could have won, but they were at least there at the end of the game for the most part. What are you guys' overall thoughts on the way that they stuck it out and showed some heart. Does it signal anything that's possible for the rest of the series and them competing well with the Bucks? Or was it just a fluke type of thing, Steven? What are your thoughts? And I again say you could get Steven's complete thoughts on the game one now on WARR Ready, but here's his thoughts right here.
Well, I feel like the Bulls definitely dodged a bullet in game one because that was far from the Bucks' best proverbial punch that they can give, especially in a playoff setting. So that leaves me weary because I feel like that was probably the best chance that the Bulls are gonna have at any point in this series to come away with a win. I predicted that it would either be game one or game three that they got their win in. And it's looking a whole lot like game one was exactly that opportunity. And they unfortunately matched the same energy that the Bucks had with being inconsistent as far as their flow offensively and having multiple defensive lapses and just never really stringing together any like sustainable success over the duration of the game. And then it ended up still being out executed in the end. So I don't know. I said gentleman sweep, but that gentleman sweep is looking extremely weary at this point in time.
So you think essentially that the Bucks played the worst game, and that they won't play a game that's bad as game one, and so it tightens the rope up even more on the Bulls because if they can't beat them at that worst, they're not going to beat them anything at any other level going forward.
Absolutely. It was just like even the littlest things like Giannis, I believe, scored 1 point in the fourth quarter. That is you could put a parlay or a bet or whatever on that because that's not gonna happen the rest of the playoffs. Chris Middleton, I think, scored maybe 3 points in the fourth quarter and like maybe 7 or 8 in the second half alone. That's likely not gonna happen again. And then just in general, like their shooters, Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton, all of those guys were pretty much for the most part they were off compared to what we've grown accustomed to them. What got them a championship last season. So you put that context to it, and then you also look at the fact that their defense wasn't even as connected as it typically is. It was more so the Bulls were just ice cold, but the Bulls had a lot of open looks. And specifically from the spots that I mentioned would be like the points in the game where they could take advantage being from above the break in the three-point line and, of course, in the mid-range. And neither one of those two entities were working in the Bulls' favor. So you bring all that in context. And yeah, it's not looking too good. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little scared for these next few games. But I'm hoping they can do something as far as making adjustments and also making shots in general that can help reverse the fortunes, at least in my mind. And all you can ask for is a chance. And then at that point, you see what DeMar and Zach can do in the clutch.
Gabe, Josh, what you guys think?
If I was an assistant, go ahead, Josh. You got it.
I was going to say, like, I agree with everything Steve's saying. I think for me, one of the most things that glared out to me in game one was the fact that their shot selection was so bad, especially down the stretch. Like, playoff basketball is such a different style of basketball. You can't just run and gun everything like they're accustomed to doing all season long. It slows down in the half court. You have to play excellent defense. You got to execute offensively. And when you and the crazy part is the Bulls have the players that can do that. But you have to be selective and very efficient with what you in your shot selection to not only put yourself in the best position to score, but to also eliminate Milwaukee's chances of taking advantage of those second chance opportunities and extra offensive possessions on the floor. And I feel like the Bulls struggled so badly in that it gave Milwaukee more chances than they needed to actually extend the game longer and put the Bulls in an even worse situation than they could have been in. And that's not going to work in the playoffs, especially against a championship poised team like the Bucks. They've been through this rodeo before, so they know what to do. And give credit to Mike Budenholzer, the head coach of the Bucks. He's been known all of his coaching career as someone to not make adjustments. That has changed since last season in that especially in that finals, that helped them get that championship. And you can see the adjustments they made throughout this season and into the playoffs, which is something that Billy Donovan has not lived up to. And that showed throughout the playoffs and in game one. So the Bulls are playing just like in a way I expected to. First time players, first time playoffs. And you got to iron out those kinks along the way. And once you iron out those kinks, then the Bulls will be better. But that I agree with Steve. That was probably the game they should have won. I think I agree that the best chance should be Game 3 because Madhouse on Madison is completely different when it comes playoff time. Especially since you haven't been doing that since the 3 Alphas. That's something that Bulls fans will be excited for. But at the same time, it is the playoffs. And you got to play like you meant to be there. And the Bulls struggled in that in Game 1. Hopefully they'll learn from that as they transition to Game 2. And for sure, Game 3 when they play in front of the home fans at United Center.
Yeah, it's interesting too. That game is going to be on ABC on Friday night, which both of the home games going to be on ABC. But the Friday night one was interesting to me. So I think it shows that the Bulls were wanted in this postseason. It is meaningful when the Bulls have that spotlight on them. But yeah.
If I was an assistant coach on Sunday night on the Bulls staff, I would have been PO'd. Just straight up, because even though it's a young team, and they did show that they were young in every sense of the word. When you look at the stat sheet from that game, they forced 21 turnovers. Okay, you wanna know how many fast break points they had? 5.
Yep.
Yeah.
That to me was one of the most telling signs of the game. And whenever they forced the turnover, you know what they did not do? That I know damn well if Lonzo was on the floor, he would have done. They didn't push it. That's what's got to change going into tomorrow night in Game 2. If they really want to win. When you get a rebound, you got to push it. And they didn't. And then on top of that, we talked about the Bulls all year. One of their biggest struggles is rebounding. The rebounding stat, 58 Milwaukee, 53 Bulls. So Milwaukee was +5 in the rebounding category, and they won by 7. And I've been saying it all year. And we was talking about it ourselves, me, Cal, and Sean Terry after that Clippers game. The team who typically leads the night in rebounding is the team that's usually going to win in the playoffs. And talk about shot selection, Josh. Vucevic took 10 threes. Now, I understand some of those threes he has no choice but to take, because one thing about Milwaukee's defense is designed to funnel you into the paint and bring a double with either Brook or Giannis, who just flies around. And Brook is the one that really commands the middle area in the paint. But they want you to take the threes. And as Steven alluded to, when you get those threes, you have to knock them down. But I do have an issue with Vucevic taking 10 threes, because there were times where he was taking threes against mismatches that he should have been seeking to back down. And this team does not need Vucevic taking 10 threes a night with the personnel that they have on the floor. They need him in the interior within 10 to 15 feet at best. It's one thing to take maybe 3 to 5, but when you're taking 10, you settling. And then Zach. And for Zach to go in a press conference and say, I didn't think that the shot that I took was a bad shot. In that situation, that's a bad shot. Mm-hmm. Even if you make it, fans will live with it because you made it. But that's a bad shot. Your shot selection this time of year has to improve. If it does not, you will continue to be where you've always been, and that's on the outside looking in. And this is a team that I really felt like out of everybody that played the other night, the Bulls' 2 best players were Caruso and Kobe White. Caruso for his defensive effort, and Kobe White for being able to knock down, catch, and shoot threes. And in my opinion, Kobe didn't call for the ball enough.
Nope.
Because if I was him in the fourth, like, they really should have been closing with Kobe. I hate to say that. I know that's a questionable call because of his defense, but the way he played, they wouldn't have had the lead if it wasn't for Kobe and Caruso. Those guys brought the energy. DeRozan, he forced a lot of shots. Like, you're looking off guys and you're taking a lot of ill-advised shots. If you don't have it, man, Go to the guys that do. Zach was hot early on, and he had it, but foul trouble. Once he got into foul trouble, he stopped attacking the rim. You cannot continue to do that. You have to push the ball up on Milwaukee and make them pay. And I agree with you, Steven. Milwaukee played their worst basketball that they're gonna play this entire series. They don't really respect the Bulls either. And that's the thing that's sad. And it doesn't take a blind man to see that they don't respect them. Like they look at the Bulls as pushovers. It's no different than the way the Packers look at the Bears. You pushovers. And it's gonna take somebody on that team that's a vet to fight back and be like, hell no, we're not going for that. You know, and it's gonna like, yeah, they could win game 3, they could be in game 2, but in game 3, yeah, I give them a chance in game 3 because of the crowd. But then again, whether that crowd is on 10 or not, you playing a defending world champions. They're trying to repeat. They're about business. And anytime, you know, they want to lose on a final day of the regular season, rest their starters, I mean, it makes sense. They own you. You only 90 minutes up the road. You know, we ain't got to travel that far to kick y'all ass. You know, like at this point, man, if you the Bulls, you got to ask yourself, where's your fight? Where's your fight? And Billy, he's gonna get a lot of leeway this year because he had a lot of guys hurt. No matter how this story ends, he's gonna get a lot of leeway. But it is fair to ask questions about his coaching ability, even in spite of that. Because after this season, guess what? The pressure is magnified. This is Chicago. The city wants to see a winner. You know, whether you got homegrown talent or not, they want to see a winner. And what AK and Mark have tried to build here has been pretty solid through the first couple of years. They got a foundation in place. But they gotta tomorrow, they gotta push it. Defense gotta be there. You got to make shots, especially the wide open shots on the 3-point line. You got to make them. And this time of year, you ain't making shots, you cook.
You ain't lying, Gabe. I mean, it's a lot. Like I said, you hit a lot on the head there, man. And I mean, with all that said, do we see this as you can't really see it as a must win because the expectations aren't really there. And you still do have 2 games in a row at home, even if you fall down 0-2. But I mean, I'll let y'all say that. What do you think on that range of must win? Do the Bulls sit with this next game? Is it simply about making a statement? Because what Gabe says, if you're dealing with a lack of respect inherent from your opponent, you got to do something physically or emotionally to smack them in the mouth. You know, you got to make some type of statement. You can't just go out and just play a ball and hope that everything comes together, which so many times, so many ways, it seemed like that's how the Bulls were expecting things to be this year for them. That if they just go out and play and do what they do, eventually they'll come through. But, you know, as they got further along throughout the year, they found out that that's not going to be the case. They need to do more. And if they're not matching energy, if they're not matching intensity, you know, even them missing their shots, even with them missing the shots that they did, if they had more intensity, more physicality to their game, maybe they would have got more balls off the rebound. Maybe they got more 50-50 balls. Maybe they would have got more points in transition, which Gabe brought to our attention so well. That's when they've shown themselves to be more effective this year, is when they've gotten out and they made teams run and they've exhibited their legs and their ability to play a 94-foot game. You know, so many plays we've seen, like Javonte Green, get the ball back out of almost impossible positions, you know, get the ball back for the Bulls. Caruso getting his hands, in passing lanes and stuff. We saw parts of that too in game 1. That's what allowed the Bucks to be contained under 100 points in that game. You know, the Bulls defense played as well as it did in weeks leading up to that, but it wasn't enough. But, you know, Steve, I'll give it back to you. You know, what do you think what do you think the pressure is? Where does it lie most for the Bulls going into this second game?
Wow. You made some very great points, and so did Gabe, and so did Josh as well. I'm with you, Kyle, and that you can't say it's a must win because it's only game 2. But kind of one of the little monikers that I use to like make the difference between the two. There's must win games when like your back is against the wall after that, and then there's just gotta have it games. And this game too is definitely a gotta have it game because if you go down 0-2, even if you're going back home, I mean they've made your house their house for the last 13, 14 games that Giannis has played the Bulls in his
Good
career.
point, yeah.
So it's not like your home court advantage is the typical home court advantage because you've allowed your opponents to grow so comfortable in the confines of your home that they come in like Rick James and they put their feet up on your couch and they leave dirt marks all over, and then, they asking you to bring them stuff.
Buy another one, you're rich.
It's the energy. You see it. And it's literally that you can literally see it in the demeanor of starting with Giannis, and then it trickles down to every other player on the roster. They're like, okay, Giannis is this comfortable and he's doing this and that. I'm that comfortable and I'm gonna do this and that too. And now the whole team is, jiving while they putting the Bulls down in front of their home crowd again. So I feel like it's definitely a gotta have it game. And there's like specific adjustments that I would like to see them make starting defensively. And first of all, with the double teams, when you're double teaming guys, the rotations that flow across the court from the weak side, from the strong side, then following over to the weak side, there shouldn't be open shot after open shot after open shot conceded after one pass is made out of the double team. That completely negates the reason for double teaming. Like, you want to get the ball out of Giannis's hands, but you're not getting it out of his hands to concede an open three-pointer to shooters that are shooting at above league average. That's not at least I would hope that's not the game plan. So what I would like to see from them is, one, instead of allowing Giannis to get clean catches in the post, they should, instead of letting them catch it, they should front the post and make them throw those passes over their heads. And then, because 9 times out of 10, the person behind Giannis in protecting the rim is typically either Tristan Thompson or even more often than him is Vucevic. Allow Vucevic and Tristan to then take that responsibility off the catch, and they can rotate to the backside or find whoever's open as the defense rotates over. That's it's called a scram switch. That would be a lot more effective execution of a game plan and double teaming to not just concede open threes on the weak side, because again, all those players on that team, like Wesley Matthews wasn't on that team last year, but he's got a championship within the past 2 seasons. Like, he's battle tested and he's gonna hit those shots over and over again when he's wide open. So like little tweaks like that, and then also out of double teams, when they're double teaming off of pick and rolls, the ball handlers, they have to step up more in the paint on the roller, that guy that's the release valve, the outlet man. Because 9 times out of 10 on Sunday, when Brook Lopez caught the ball off of double teams from Middleton and Holiday off of ball screens, he could take like 2-3 dribbles from the free throw line to basically the restricted area unattested, like unaccounted for. Like, that's not, like, you don't double team to concede, these big gaps in situations where the offense is still at a high advantage. Like, that negates the entire purpose of it. So that's just what I want to see from them in this what do I call it? Not must win, but in this gotta have it game.
Gotta have it, yeah. There you go. But, yeah, y'all know about those scram switches, don't you? Yeah, that's the type of analysis you get from Steven, man. That's what you get when you mess with a kid like this. So keep reading him on WARR Ready. Don't miss his next review when he'll be writing about the game too, and we'll try to have that out, as soon as possible after the game. But Steve, man, this is your first time on the show and everything. I want to introduce you a little bit to the audience who haven't read you and everything yet. Give a little bit about your background and as in basketball and writing, and what you looking forward to doing, be it with us or in general as a writer.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity again, Kyle. I appreciate it.
I
want to give
my pleasure.
Gabriel as well as Josh. This is my first time meeting y'all as well, and anybody in the audience, peace and blessings. My name is Stephen Gardner. I'm from Maywood, Illinois, about 15 minutes west of Chicago. That's me.
708, baby. What's happening? What's happening?
That's my dead neck of the woods.
But yeah, that's where I'm from. That's home for me. That's always gonna be home for me. I've been playing ball since I was 4. I've been watching ball since I was like 2. My mom always reminds me that when
you
I was
remember
like,
you remember watching basketball with you too, Steven?
Hey, my mom was my release valve for that. She always tell me what I was doing back then. I don't remember it, but she did tell me. She always reminded me that when I was like 3 or 4 years old, when the Bulls was at their peak with MJ and everybody, she said that I could recognize all the players by their face, and I would call them by their names through the TV and everything. And I would always get my grandma and my grandpa laughing because it's like, how does this little boy just don't even know what's really going on, just disattached to the game. So my love for the game goes all the way back to before I can even remember. And my desire, so I went to college. I went to Illinois State University, graduated in 2018 with a major in sports journalism. So my desire and all of my efforts and all these deposits that I'm making as a writer and as a creative is to eventually manifest that desire into a career and start getting paid full time for all these skills that I've acquired over the past 5-6 years. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm working on a few different internships, including with WARR Media, and just trying to continue creating content, growing, learning. Can never learn enough. You ever stop learning, you're not living. So I'm just trying to continue to apply all the learnings that I'm acquiring over this time and honing my skills in and being patient on this marathon of mine.
I definitely appreciate you, man, and what you bring. You've been bringing a lot, already, man, and I definitely appreciate your writing and your knowledge for the game, man. You really bring a lot to the table, and we definitely want to bring you on. Cause like I say, this is where we build, definitely our basketball minds here. Gabe and Josh have been here for a while, and Drew as well, and Chris has been from the beginning of this show, has been with us. So yeah, we definitely want to make sure that you get on the show and contribute as well, because you definitely know what you're talking about.
Yes, sir. Like I said, I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm just ready to work. I'm a worker. So I want to compile as much experience and network with everybody as much as I can, so we can all elevate.
Yeah, that's it. There you go, man. Appreciate that as well. And that's his tag there. That's your tag on Twitter, right? And
that's my tag on all social media platforms.
All social media, okay.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, definitely keep up with him and what he's doing, whether it's with us or anyone else. And before we go, I'm gonna like I said, we're not gonna keep us too long today, but I just want to make a little mention of the award finalists, and that already they've given out the award for Defensive Player of the Year with Marcus Smart in Boston, and I know I've seen we've seen some talk online from amongst us and our contemporaries already about some of these finalists. So you look at the Coach of the Year, you got Taylor Jenkins, Eric Spoelstra, and Monty Williams. So that Memphis, Miami, and Phoenix represented there. It's a improved player, most improved, Garland for Cleveland, Ja Morant, and Dejounte Murray. A lot of people surprised that Jordan Poole didn't make that finalist list there for most improved. And MVP, of course, so much talk about MVP throughout the year. For a long time, it's been 5 or 6 people seemingly in the mix, but the only 3 who have a chance at this point is Giannis, Joel Embiid, and Nikola Jokic. So you got 2 past MVPs and Joel, a lot of people's favorite to finally get one this year. And Rookie of the Year, Scotty Barnes from the Toronto, Cade Cunningham for Detroit, and Evan Mobley of Cleveland. 6th Man of the Year, Tyler Hero, Cam Johnson, and Kevin Love. A few vets there. And there we go. Anything interesting that jumps out to y'all with those awards? Like I said, already we got defensive going to Marcus Smart, if you want to talk about that as well. like I say, anything that jumps out amongst those class of players and those finalists.
Ja getting nominated for most improved player. How did that happen? Don't get me wrong. Ja Morant's a hell of a player. He's an all-star in this league, deservedly so. But that was improvement that we expected to see. That was improvement that every year since he's been in the league, he's improved as a player. Darius Garland, I would say the same about. It's one thing when you're a lottery pick who has shown steady signs of improvement year after year after year. It's another thing if you're a lottery pick, maybe like, let's say, on the level of a Marvin Bagley, who didn't have the best environment. You drew a couple of DMPs, and then all of a sudden, you rise up and you find your footing in the league. But I felt like, honestly, for most improved player, we need to widen the pool for that. You can't you just can't have 3 finalists for that award. Like, we talked about how Jordan Poole is a deserving candidate, and he's shown that through the first 2 games of the playoffs and all season long. But Miles Bridges had a hell of a season.
Yes.
And I think he deserves some credit and should be a nominee for that award. I just want to know what's the criteria for some of these awards. I wonder who the league is giving voting privileges to. Not to respect people's media credentials, but I just would love to know, and I would love to see more media members share their votes and put their names in front of their votes and explain why they're voting in that manner. Because like with the MVP, based on what I saw seen on the Twitter, side of and everything in the final tallies, it's looking like it's gonna be Jokic, and it's looking like we're gonna have a MVP winner. Sort of similar to the 06-07 season when Dirk won it, where he's going to be getting an award after getting knocked out in round 1. And that's not a pretty scene, and I just want to know. Like, I mean, I'm not knocking it. And then it's like, what's our criteria? What's our levels? Because to me, I feel like Embiid is becoming the runner-up candidate of the 2020s decade in a way that was similar to the James in the 2010s, and from the mid to late 2010s, whereas you're going to start seeing him in the MVP race every year. But in spite of bettering and getting, elevating his play, you start to wonder, well, damn, what does he have to do to win it? Like, what's our criteria for MVP? Because we shaking the needle in the balance each and every year. And I know it's a narrative-driven award, but it's like, come on, man. Like, what are we really doing? Because you got to take that vote seriously when you have it.
That seems to be the most consistent thing about it, is this about narrative. And that when you talk about something that's, like that's sort of, it's not something that sticks every year. It's not something that lands the same way. It's fluid. And it, like I said, changes from year to year. It changes when different writers get votes and get ability to vote, and others sort of fall back and aren't there anymore. Some people like to challenge the idea of the vote. Some people fall in line with the rest of their peers. Well, most do that. And once you get to like with every generation, like you have those guys who seem like they should win it every year, or at least be in contention. But you also have your upsets. You have your errors where somebody pops up, and in their hindsight, somebody looks back, and people want to look back and be like, how did Steve Nash win 2 in a row? Or, people want to question people like Derrick Rose with his year, but they lack the context of seeing those years when they played out, and how things were judged, what was valued in those given years, and why these people got to. They just weren't there. You weren't outside. Is what we like to say, and a lot of people on the challenge stuff like that. But they're also, you can have arguments for almost all those years too, because maybe LeBron was the best player. Well, there was no argument. LeBron was the best player in the world when Rose won. But, Rose was also the only person who kept him from winning 5 MVPs in a row. should anyone ever win 5 MVPs in a row in the NBA? I mean, I don't know. That's another question. So, I don't know, but I'll throw it back to you guys about what your thoughts on MVP or any of the other awards.
It's Politics Nation. That's all it is, man. Politics Nation. That's why I don't look forward to these, end of the season awards at all, just because of that and everything you guys are saying. Because we don't know exactly what the standard is for each award that's being given. There's no solidified standard. If you talk about most valuable, literally, like you take that person off a team, and that team goes to crap without them. Yeah, Joel Embiid's probably gonna be number 1 on that list. He's worthy of that award. You do the same thing, Defensive Player of the Year. Yeah, Marcus Smart probably was well deserving of that. But Mikal Bridges for sure. If you didn't play that X Factor glue, Suns wouldn't be number 1 in the Western Conference right now. So it's like what is the needle? Like Gabe talked about, what is that needle? What is that deciding factor of what valuable really means to a team in each of these awards? It's not solidified. It's too opinionated. So based on that opinion,
what's valuable? What's improved?
There's no solidified standard. So you're gonna run into this all the time. And I don't have time to be sitting there playing Politics Nation with everybody, trying to figure out who chose who and who chose what. That's just not. You
just bowing out the whole process.
Yeah, forget all that. I'll have my picks and I'll tell you why I have my picks. But if you ask of me, if they ask of me, I'll tell you. But at the same time, since we don't have a unilateral standard for what each award means, like truly means, and we're not gonna know. We're gonna have too much of this up and down situation that we're going through now, and I just don't have time for it. Now I don't look forward to it. I just okay, cool. You won an award, congratulations. No, I need to see if it meets my standard of what that looks like, and if it does, great. If it doesn't, yeah, we'll have a discussion, and you can have your own debate show with me. Kyle, I can do it all day. So we do that, be good. But outside of that, yeah, whatever, y'all can have it. I'm just here for the playoffs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But go ahead. I'll say right quick. You think, because there are a lot of people who think that these awards should extend into the playoffs, as what, in particular, the MVP. A lot of people say that, but you don't agree with that. You think they should stick to the regular season game?
Stick to the regular season. Just don't move the needle. Like you want to move this needle for Jokic, and I get it. I understand he didn't have Jamal Murray. I understand he didn't have Michael Porter Jr. I understand being able to keep them within the top 6 where they didn't have to get in the play-in round was a phenomenal job. But then again, if we're gonna say that Nikola Jokic is the MVP of the league, then why didn't Kobe Bryant win it in 05-06 over Steve Nash when he led the league in scoring? They were a 7 seed that year. Kobe had a damn good year then why D Wade didn't win in 08-09 when he led the league in scoring over LeBron? Like where are the parameters? Like last time I checked, before Harden got to Philly, Joel Embiid was still top dog in the race. We then all of a sudden we want to switch it when Harden comes and say, well, he got the job easy. No. And then what I would love to know is, even though international players are carrying this league, what is our obsession with international players and their stories? Do we really like them because of the way that they play, or do we like them for the story? Because and then like when you say, well, we shouldn't have an MVP that's won 3 to 5 times. I mean, in the 80s you did. In the 80s, Bird won 3 straight. I don't think Larry Bird was the best player in the NBA in the 80s 3 years straight. Now, I could be wrong. I was born in the early 90s. But when I look back at the 80s in basketball, I really have a difficult time. As great as Larry Bird was, and I'm going to say he deserved 2 out of the 3. But how did he get 3 when it was some years Magic could have got a couple? Like it's all we play politics so much with the MVP award. And I think we lose meaning of what most valuable player means. Like it's in the name. Mm-hmm. But we oversimplify it, as we do with a lot of things in this country.
Steve, I'll let you get off your rounds. Then we'll wrap it up.
All right. Well, to answer your first question, I feel like the regular season awards need to stay in the regular season, and I also feel like there needs to be an independent segment for playoff awards, because then it's gonna be valued differently. Like, of course, yeah, you're gonna have players that aren't qualifying for the MVP award playing at 64, 65 games that's needed to qualify for the finalists in, the respective regular season awards. Those players are then gonna most likely be healthy and performing at the peakest of their peaks in the most valuable games, being in the playoffs. So if you have two,
that is something that you have in hockey.
Yeah,
you have your regular season MVP and your playoff MVP.
Yeah, and I feel like we're naturally progressing towards that with the NBA, and I think it'll be a lot more healthy for the general discourse, because people go up in arms and almost flame out completely trying to engage themselves in these conversations about who should win this award. And it's more so even less than who should win it. It's more so the point they're making is why someone else shouldn't. When we're looking at, we always put a point of emphasis on this being the most talented, most skilled generation collectively of athletes in the NBA. So when we come to bringing context to that, and then we have an opportunity to appreciate all of these talents, we instantly go to pinning one against the other, or saying that this guy is great and this guy's just all right. But really, all of these guys are great. All these guys are greater than great, and they're playing some of the best basketball again that the sport has ever seen. But we're trying to diminish one to upgrade the other. Like, it's just not healthy. It's not healthy for the sport. Comparison is the thief of joy. And like my guy Cole always say, act like two legends can't coexist. Two legends can coexist. It's just a matter of your perspective on how you're going about speaking on them and comparing them to one another, So I feel like the general discourse has to be more healthy in terms of that. And as far as the awards itself, I just don't like Gabe said, there's no concrete criteria for what each award gets, because I'm looking at last season with Monty Williams and what he did with the Suns, them going up to 51 wins last season and having like a north of 70% win percentage, in the shortened season. That's a big jump for a team that hadn't made the playoffs in I forgot how many years prior to that. And then to come back into this season and to jump that by 14, go from 51 to 64, like, and then for there still to be like a question as to is he gonna win it? Like, that's because of that gray area that exists with so many of the awards, to where no one really knows who's gonna win it. And then you can even look at Defensive Player of the Year. Marcus Smart was most definitely deserving, but ever since the turn of the calendar, people act like the Celtics weren't out of the playoffs going into the new year. Meanwhile, you got Mikal Bridges, who played every game in his career, and then of course every game this season, and has been, I just feel like availability has to be rewarded in some way, and bringing the whole context in of the season, like the template as a whole, and not just portions of it. When comparing the finalists for these awards, it just has to be more clean. And then of course, like Josh said, Gabe said as well, putting a name to these things is the most important thing, because I feel like a lot of people get away with saying, like, being a homer or being partial to specific players because they don't have to attach their name to their votes. Versus if you made it public, that's gonna make people hesitate on saying these things and doing these things, because they got to be held accountable. And I just feel like that would be a great thing for just the general discourse as a whole, with sports in general, but especially with basketball. And that would help, evolve the game along with, and make conversations a lot more healthy.
Well, you guys are starting to get a little deep there.
But lately they do reveal the names, because every year since they've been doing that, when they started doing the NBA award shows, that's the first thing I look at when they drop.
Okay.
I want to know who's voting, and I want to know how they're voting. Mm-hmm. And I would love to see their explanations as to why. But you're right. The media does try to divide players. I watched them try to divide two best friends in Harden and Westbrook in 16-17. Man. That was the craziest shit I ever witnessed.
Man,
you could go one way or the other way that year. They were both that great. But the way that they tried to pit those guys against one another And when they were in the room in LA, conversating with one another, they was like, well, what's that for? Them dudes been knowing each other since they was like 10 years old. Like that's like they do that. They do it. Even with Harden and Giannis. And you definitely have your homers.
Yeah.
Because you know most of the time in the Milwaukee market, yeah, Giannis got the vote. In the Denver market, yeah, Jokic got the vote. In the Houston market, J.A. got the vote.
Yep. And that's not fair because a lot of times, and it really doesn't show until these people who have these votes, or even if it's like a national media market analyst or, personality, like let's say Stephen A. Smith. And it's I'm not even talking specifically about him. It's just like an example. Right. A lot of these people, they don't watch all the games. They watch the games that are on national TV and watch whoever it is that they're trying to drive a narrative for. They don't watch all the games. And like my favorite player is Chris Paul, and he had this post-game interview 2 weeks ago to end the regular season where they were talking about Devin Booker. Is he the MVP? He didn't give his specific answer, though obviously he was biased. But what he did suggest was that people watch the games. Actually watch the games, because there's no way in hell that a player the caliber of Bam Adebayo should not finish top 3 in the defensive player of the year defensive player of the year race. When if you could watch any random 5 Miami Heat games from this season, whether they won or lost, and you're gonna come away saying that I've never seen another defender besides Draymond Green at the 4/center position be the hub of a defense from that stature, from that position, to be able to do all of the things that he's doing. That is literally the key that unlocks the entire scheme that defense is playing, that they're deploying. Like you can't watch 5 games and not say that Bam is not a top 3 candidate for the defensive player of the year. And he met I think he just barely met the games played criteria. So all of the whatever you can use to pin against them, all that stuff goes out of the wash, because if you actually watch the games, there's no way. Like I know Marcus Smart won it, and Mikal Bridges is deservedly second, and he arguably could have won it too. But Bam is without question the best defensive player in the league right now because of the all-encompassing skills he has. And right after him is Draymond, and then after him is probably Rudy Gobert, and then you get into the Mikal Bridgeses and the Marcus Smarts of the world. But it's just they're not held accountable because they don't watch all the games, and it comes out when the results come and when they have to speak on whatever topic it is, So it's just not fair. And then the influence that comes with what they have is what's the biggest problem with everything.
When you insert these narratives though into these things, there may be at times a chance, there may be an extra chance for a guy to win because the media or the voters may in some way be looking to correct something or right or wrong or just do something that hasn't been done in a while, which is exactly what happened with Defensive Player of the Year, because Smart is the first player since Gary Payton to win as a guard.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think about that being a factor in these sort of things? Whereas, maybe it has been overdue for a guard to win that award again.
If Marcus Smart wasn't in Boston, I don't think he'd have won it. I'm just gonna be honest with you. Boston is a big time media market.
Yep.
They hold a lot. They hold a lot of weight. When you're on that East Coast, you get a lot of love when you winning.
Yep.
You get a lot of love. It ain't no different. It ain't no different on that West Coast when you got a big West Coast market like you, Steph Curry, and you in the Bay. It holds a lot of weight.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the city you play in, and those media personnel, they will back you. And I kind of get to a certain degree why some do, especially with the way some of these national media. Because in my opinion, the beat writers should have the votes more than anybody.
They watch everyone.
They at the game. They at the 41 home games and the 41 road games each and every year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they the ones that really deserve it. So I don't knock a beat writer vote because they there. But the national people, you right, Stephen. No, they don't watch no basketball hardly. They don't. They don't keep up with a lot of it, and it's like it's a lot of he say, she say. The narrative. Sometimes the narrative is cool if it's a player that's really overlooked, but it's just funny because like all I can think about with Jokic winning this year, which he would be a back-to-back MVP. Like I just think about Harden in 18-19. I seen Harden when he had Chris Paul and he had Clint Capella for a stretch, keep them in the top 3 or 4 in the West. With all due respect, Jokic about to win an MVP and he ain't even finished top 4 in the West.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
Team success, because you got a lot of these people who say, "Well, the MVP is a I base it off of how your team performing." People kill me with that.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing with this is the narrative component, because even when you talk about narrative, not even just for MVP races, but just in general, when you talk about pinning people against each other, they were doing it even at the draft. They tried to pin Luka Doncic against Trae Young and say Doncic is going to be better than Trae.
Yep.
And look what Trae has done since he got in the league. He's done his thing. And even in the beginning of this season, when they was going into the offseason trying to figure out, who would you want to see as potential candidates for the MVP? Who's the number one guy they put up there? Luka Doncic.
He always is.
Always
the international player. Last year, I predict somebody asked me who was gonna win MVP. You know what I told them? I said, personally, I don't know, but if I was a betting man, I would bet you that Luka is the favorite to win it. And Luka could have won it if he had just stayed healthy, even if it was a 6 or 7 seed, just put up monster numbers. Because we love, and I don't like international players. They great for the game, but it's like, do we really love them for their game, or do we love their stories? Let's separate.
It could be some instances of lowered expectations too.
No, like with Luka, the hype around Luka was so crazy. Even when I was covering the Rockets, it was like all these games. I saw Luka as rookie in Milwaukee. The fan base that this man had internationally was incredible. But then not only just the fans, he had the media in his back pocket. I never seen a Rookie of the Year award. I knew after 40 games, I was like, he could sit out the rest of the season. He's still going to win. Trae had a better second half than Luka did.
Yeah.
But because Luka averaged 25 and 5, which is an exclusive category if you a rookie, was damn near guarantee you the Rookie of the Year award, and you have all these moments, and you got these fans, and you got the media, international media, it's like, he going to win it. And you right, Josh. Trae did do something Luka didn't do. Trae in his first playoff run got to the Eastern Conference Finals. Luka still ain't got out the first round. And that be the issue. And that's why a lot of these debates on Twitter become a little bit personal. And they be like, no, you do need to point that out. Trae is who you thought Luka was.
Yeah.
That need to be pointed out. Yeah. If we really gonna read the game and watch this shit between the lines, you got to point that out.
Yeah. Most definitely. And they hyped Luka up so much, they said he's like the next best thing since Dirk.
Yep.
Like they was literally putting this man as like the Jordan of international basketball coming into this league.
I remember that too. Yep.
Yeah, and
I got homies in Dallas that's big time Mavs fans. My homeboy got his jersey signed by Luka when we was at the game, and he running down there like it's a conglomerate of people. and I even go back and forth with him. I'm like, I know that's your guy, and yeah, he the face of the franchise. Luka is a bona fide star, but yeah, he came into the league with a lot of hype. And I knew a lot of guys that didn't even like him. I was like, once I saw him against Houston, I knew at the time with Harden and those guys and CP, I'm like, yeah, he the real deal. But like this media thing, man, it's got to be discussed.
Yeah, that's true.
You definitely have
Trae Young sticking with the ATL brothers. Shout out to the Trae doing his thing with the ATL, man. We got to give a shout out. Rashad Phillips has been on him from the jump. I had this man on my show. He mentioned from the jump, like, yo, Trae Young is the real deal. He would take him over Luka. And look what you see. Trae Young over here down there enjoying Magic City, eating Lou Williams wings right now because he then went to the Eastern Conference Finals and lived higher expectations than what many people expected him while Luka's sitting on the bench.
And then you remember when they said in the draft that he was gonna be the biggest bust?
Yeah.
The dude led the all college basketball in total points and assists. If it was anybody else, they would have been like, oh, look at him. But Trae, nah. Like that summer league, they was
doing this year.
Something like that. Like, oh, he trash, he ain't gonna make it, he too small. Like, but at the beginning, it was all good.
Right. I mean, even look at this. Look what he did this year. The dude averaged 29 and 10. And he was not talked about all season long because of Joel Embiid and the Giannis, Jokic, and those guys. Okay, great. But they still in the playoffs, and he's averaging 29 and 10. Never been done before by a point guard.
Mm-hmm. And led the league in total points and total assists again.
Yeah.
Same thing you did in college, you just did in the league this season.
Yeah, this season. But they quiet now, and they been quiet ever since the second half of his rookie year. Like, they really can't say nothing. And Trey been top 5 in assists since his rookie year in the league. Mm-hmm. Every single year, you check the stats. He was top 5 in points per game and assists per game his second year in the league when he got to his first All-Star game. Mm-hmm. And who was there with him? Luka. But when Luka was here in Chicago, you saw how all the press was at Luka. Yeah. Like I said, it's these double standards that we love to play for some odd reason. I know why, but I just want to hear us really open up and talk about why that truly is.
And to kind of bring it back around to where Kyle has started with, in terms of the media having a propensity for trying to make up for wrongs of the past, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we could look at Steve Nash, well, Kobe Bryant, first of all, having 1 MVP in his entire career. Kobe Bryant, on most people's top 10 of all time, came away with 1 MVP. Like, that's not making any sense. And the 1 MVP that he got, they gave to him because they realized that they did him wrong giving Steve Nash the MVP the year prior.
I think so,
which
too.
in turn took away from Chris Paul's MVP season. So it's like, you get where I'm going with it. Yeah. If you continue down this path of trying to right your wrongs, you're never going to catch up. You're always going to be a half step behind. So that's why it's important to establish the accountability needed to get it right the first time so that you can continue to progress and evolve. Man. Because if you're constantly trying to catch up, that's a dead mission long term.
And it goes back to the fact that everybody can't win everything. So, everybody, some people may have to come away from their career feeling like they weren't awarded as much as they should have been. And they're going to be a select few who do get overpraised. And
that's why
but they did him dirty too. I mean, I think about 96, 97. Like, it was some year, like, if Larry Bird won 3 MVPs in a row, I know good and well Mike could have easily won 3 years in a row in the 90s. They just didn't, like, because it's something called voter fatigue. That's what I call it too. Because once you win back to back, it's hard as hell to get another one. Mm-hmm. Giannis showing it now. Mm-hmm. Like, after you win 2 years in a row, you might as well, That's why I said last year Luka was gonna be the favorite. Giannis could have had a better year than Luka. They still was gonna give it to Luka because they get tired of you after you win back to back.
Yeah, and I mean it's like you say, that's why it's such a rarity. But I think it's just hard. Like I said, I talked about LeBron. Like, to maintain that standard of being the best player in the league for that many years or more. Is just about impossible. There's only a handful of players who ever could play at that sort of level for that long of a period. But you have, in order to be recognized, that would mean that people we have our biases and everything, even professional writers and all that stuff, they would have to get over those things like voter fatigue or just whatever shiny, whatever the fact that we all have when we see something shiny and new come along, or or more devious things or more sinister things. We've sort of tiptoeing around. Those things are they affect us all, and unfortunately, it leads to those awards. I don't know if I would call them tainted, and for the most part, I think for the most part, we year to year we typically give them to the right people, but they're typically given to the right people. But there are arguments to be had, and as going to what Josh said, we all have different standards and different outlooks that we have towards the game and what we value and all that. But it sort of reflects in who we root for more than others, you know. So, you know, stand up for your peoples, you know, stand up, just you know, be secure in who you do like and what you do value, and you know, if you want to ride for Trey Young, you know, that's good because he probably gonna be going down 2-0, and it looks like it's about to be down 2-0. So I don't know how much more he's going to establish himself this year, but he's done a lot. He has done a lot, and I think the thing about the last thing I'm gonna say about that, going back to that trade and that night, what was reasonably egregious was the fact that most people, and I will say on that national level of, you know, ESPN and NBA, whatever, NBA TV or whatever, they thought so much that Dallas got away with on that trade, that they got off, that they hit a lick on that trade.
Yep.
But it wasn't to it gives, I say, it's a good lesson for all y'all who haven't watched the game, you know, the game or the game of basketball as much as we have. When you see so much of a narrative go shift in one direction, always ask why that's the case.
Yep.
And don't run in that direction yourself. Do the knowledge before you run in that direction yourself, because in most cases those narratives are faulty and they're bound to fall apart over time. So, you know, yeah, the Hawks didn't get fleeced in that trade. They got a franchise player of their own, and they got a guy who's they're going to keep for a long time and go to do a lot of playoffs battles with. Will they win it all with Trey? I don't know. That remains to be said. But Dallas doesn't have any more of a chance to win it all just because they have Luka Doncic.
Yep.
Perfectly said.
You'll see it.
My mama said she loved him. Check it out.
That's right. That's good journalism right there. Yeah. Your mom say she love you. Check that stuff out. But we go end it on that one, y'all. Great session with you guys. Those are the tags right there by each of their names. Gabe, what Gabe said, Josh M Hicks Media, and Steven Stay True S.3. Y'all keep up with these brothers doing you know, just follow them if you want to talk some good game, man. Talk, you know, this is the time where you should be following brothers like this. And you know, it makes it all the more fun to watch these games that are going on. So we gonna keep up. Whether you follow us or not, keep up with WARR Media, and you won't be stupid, and you'll be able to educate yourself when you aren't around people who talk the game as well as we do. You can actually you're free to use some of our viewpoints if you, like, say, subscribe to WARR Media on YouTube and all that. So follow us on Twitter and all that. And you know, like I said, you could do what you want with our points. You know, if it makes it, we're here to spread intelligence. That's all we are. That's our main. That's one of our main, you know, missions in life here with this show. But we'll be back on Thursday as well. You know, we'll have my man Landon Buford will definitely be on. He'll give us some more what's going on from down in Dallas. And you know, we should have my man Josh Buckhalter, who covers the Hawks a lot. So we may be doing Luka. We'll be doing Luka Trey Part 2 on Thursday, because I'm gonna have a Dallas guy and an Atlanta guy down, you know, on the show Thursday. And until then, you know, like I say, keep rocking with us, keep reading Steven's stuff on the WARR Ready page, and read Josh as well. See if his picks go down the way that he expects them to. And Gabe, and keep following Gabe on Twitter and all that. And like I say, till next time, keep bouncing. We'll holler at y'all.
Yes, sir.
Peace.
All right. Thank you, fellas.